Hi friends, welcome back to BUSS1040. Welcome back to economics here in the macro section in week 12 talking about unemployment and inflation. So two very important topics in macroeconomics. So yes, it is 3:06 a.m. On a Sunday morning on 13th of November 2022. I just really want to get these review videos out before the test on the 26th so that more people can have enough time to review it and to go over these review videos before the exams really hit us. I have my trusty cup of coffee. I don't think I'm able to show. Just my trusty cup of coffee. Only keeping me awake, and I have a spray bottle. If I really get to sleep, I just spray it into my eyes. Anyways, let me minimize my camera, and we'll get into the content. I'll get into the content of the course. So we focus on unemployment and inflation in this week's content. So let's just get right into it. So first of all, unemployment and inflation really has quite a relationship. Okay, they have quite a correlation. And this is the idea that the Phillips curve really gets to explain the relationship between inflation and unemployment. This is the idea that when unemployment is high, that means less people are unemployed, inflation is low. Okay, this is because less people have incomes, less people have disposable incomes, and therefore people spend less. When people spend less, when people spend less, inflation levels and price levels are generally lower. When inflation is high, okay, when unemployment is when unemployment is low, however, people usually have more jobs. People are employed. When people are employed, they make more money. Therefore, they have more money to spend. Therefore, inflation is greater. So this is a trade-off in the relationship between inflation and unemployment, explained through the Phillips curve. So that's just before we really talk about it. Anyways, here we have a class outline, talking about what we're going to be talking about in today's review video. We're going to be talking about labor force numbers, types of unemployment, Alcuin's law. So that really ties in the Keynesian cross, with unemployment and with inflation. Then we also talk about labor force, different types of unemployment, which is there is a cyclical, there's structural, and there's frictional unemployment. There's also the natural rate of unemployment. So there's really a fluctuation between the three. Measuring inflation and its cost, and what the causes for inflation are. All right, so let's talk about labor force concepts. So ideas around the labor force. So someone is unemployed, okay, not when they don't have a job, but the definition of unemployed is when you are actively seeking for a job, but you cannot find one, okay. It's also a closely related concept is called underemployed, where you want to work 40 hours a week, but you only work 20 hours a week. That means you have a job, you're working a job, but you're not getting the enough hours that you actually want. So that's what we call underemployed. So you take the unemployed persons, as in people who are actively seeking jobs but unable to find one, divided by the labor force. For the labor force, it is employed persons plus unemployed person, multiply 100% to get the percentage. Not all populations participate in the labor force. For example, discouraged workers, old age people, children that are in school. These people aren't actively looking for jobs. Stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads. Okay, these people look after children. They don't have jobs. They're not actively looking for jobs. Therefore, they are not part of the labor force. Here we can see U.S. unemployment. So we can really see a cyclical and business cycle trends. They go in these boom and these bust, higher and lower unemployment figures, and we can really see a big spike here in 2020 due to COVID and sharp drawdowns due to government interventions through stimulus. Here's the Australian employment rates, and we can really see the sharp drawdown of unemployment rate, which is good because most people have jobs. A lot of due to the policy of the Liberal governments, the Job Keeper program, the cash flow boost, government subsidies and stimulus to businesses. Australian government employment since 2012, so you can see a sort of stable decrease and a sharp increase and then quite a sharp decrease in 2021. Participation rate is dividing people that are participating in the labor force by the total population. So usually a high participation rate shows that a greater proportion of the economy is participating in jobs. A lower participation rate will show that more people are perhaps not working or working, not like officially working. Here's Australia's participation rate. Australia participation rate since 2012. So we can see the male and female difference between participation rates. So we also briefly talked about underemployment in relation to the concept of employment. So some workers may want to work 40, 50 hours a week. However, the employer only wants them to work 20. So uh, they're not intentionally part-time workers, but they're like forced to be part-time workers. This is underemployment, and a big reason why Australia's unemployment figures did not just go out of the roof in 2020 is because of the JobKeeper program, okay, where the government's subsidies and government stimulus really comes into play to keep people from being fired. Okay, but underemployed really rose during the crisis. So here's Australian underemployment rate. So we could really see a big spike in 2020 as relation to not such a big spike during the 2020 unemployment rate. Okay. Some additional figures around Australia, annual growth rates and whatnot. So that's the labor force numbers and interpretations of labor force numbers. Let's talk about the different types of unemployment and Okun's law. So there's basically three different types of unemployment. Okay, you're either unemployed because you are between jobs. Okay, so you left the job due to firing, due to quitting, because of conflicts and whatnot, and then you're looking for another job. That's what we call frictional unemployment. Structural unemployment is when there's a skill mismatch. I used to be, for example, I used to be a factory worker. However, the factory is automated, therefore I'm out of a job. That's what we call structural unemployment. When your skills do not match with the demands of the market, of the labor market. And then there's cyclical unemployment. For example, because my company is experiencing tough times, I am cut as redundant. So these are basically the three reasons for unemployment. In a healthy, in a natural, in a well-functioning, well-lubricated economy, it's weird to call the economy well-lubricated, I take that back. In a well-functioning economy, there should be some levels of unemployment because, in a well-functioning economy, there is progress and there's progress and improvements in processes, okay? So older, less updated skills will be mismatched, leading to structural unemployment. People would be between jobs because they could provide more value at Google than at IBM, so they should leave IBM for a while and go to Google. Now this transition phase will be frictional unemployment. Okay, so in a well-functioning economy, there is going to be a healthy level of unemployment. Healthy in terms of macroeconomics, healthy, not healthy, perhaps best as in the best interest of the individual. So we really need to differentiate between policies to address structural and cyclical unemployment. The bad type of unemployment is cyclical unemployment. This is where um, uh, people are unemployed because of productivity issues, because of economic cycles, because businesses are struggling, and because aggregate demand is less than aggregate supply. And and so there is a natural rate of unemployment in the economy. So this is natural in the sense that the unemployment rate gravitates towards this level over time. So there should be some frictional people between jobs and some structural where there's mismatches in different skill sets. This is what we call the natural rate of unemployment, which is U star. Okay, as a percentage of total labor force, so it's multiplied by 100%. So the natural rate or U star varies over time for many reasons. Okay, demographics, uh, shifting sectors, rotations away from perhaps agriculture into more value add sort of sectors, changes in matching technology, for example, being automated, causing structural unemployment. So there is a natural, healthy sort of rate of unemployment. Now, Okun's laws really draws the gap, okay, really draws the correlation between the output gap in GDP, okay, as exemplified through Y and Y star, to the natural rate of unemployment. Okay, so when we have the natural rate of unemployment, we could calculate, or we could when we could estimate the natural rate of unemployment, we could estimate what the percentage of cyclical unemployment is. Okay, because one minus natural rate of employment should be equal cyclical unemployment. Okay, so U star is natural unemployment. This is structural and frictional unemployment. This right here, U right here, is cyclical unemployment. So cyclical unemployment minus my cyclical employment minus natural unemployment should equal total unemployed people. Okay, so therefore, when we minus minus U star, what we get is the people who are unemployed due to cyclical reasons. Okay. And then y once again is GDP or aggregate GDP minus y star is the full employment level GDP, okay, or expected GDP. And then so that means for every 1% of people being cyclically unemployed, negative two, so we expect 2% of GDP or GDP to fall 2% below its natural long-term value. This is showing the high correlation, the strong negative relationship between cyclical unemployment going up and natural expected GDP levels to go down. So every 1% increase in cyclical unemployment, we expect 2% decrease in natural GDP. Okay. Vice versa, if we see 2% decrease in natural GDP, this relationship also hold. We expect to see a 1% increase in cyclical unemployment. So that's Okun's law. All right, so now that we have touched on now that we have touched on labor, we've touched on unemployment, we've touched about measuring unemployment and Okun's law a bit. Let us also talk about measuring inflation. So inflation is a persistent general increase in prices. Okay, not a change in relative prices. Relative prices, as in, oh, here's a discount of 20%, so therefore prices have decreased by 20. No. It is a persistent as in not just one period, but across multiple months, multiple quarters of general increase in prices. So not just increases in prices of one commodity, but general. Now, how do we get to the general level of prices? Now, that's where consumer price index comes into play. CPI seeks to calculate what most living households, or cost of living for households, would be represented by. So maybe 40% goes to rent and rent equivalents, maybe 10% goes to transportation, 25% goes to food, perhaps 5% goes to entertainment, 10% goes to miscellaneous spending, so for example. So this is a basket of goods. What CPI shows is how much does this basket of good or the value or the cost of this basket of good change from this year, from this period to the next. Okay, so we've previously talked about inflation in relation to a GDP deflator, talk about the real versus nominal GDP, and then now we really want to hone in on the idea of inflation. So what CPI does is it measures a cost of a basket of goods and services for a typical household will likely purchase. So like the GDP deflator, it measures an index on 10. So if we see 107 or 107, that means that there is a 7% change or 7% increase in CPI over the year. So here we can see Australian inflation over time. It really fluctuates around 2.5. Australia really targets around 2.5 to 3% inflation as ideal. Obviously, is a lot larger than what is the targeted inflation right now, above like 7% inflation here in Sydney. So calculating the CPI, once again, you take a basket of goods and services, you see what it is this year, okay, and then you see what it is next year, and you minus it based on the percentage allocation, a weighted average of the difference. Now, there are measuring issues to CPI. Once again, CPI usually understates the actual inflation because of a few reasons. Once again, there is the baseline effect. There's also CPI chooses comparable goods from this year to the next. Okay, so for example, as technology improves, CPI will lag the indicator. For example, CPI looks at a car from 10 years ago. This car doesn't have, from 20 years ago, this car doesn't have AC. This car doesn't have parking assist. This car doesn't have rear view cameras. A year from now, when the car is, when CPI for transportation of cars is being conducted, the same car is taken out, okay? 30 years from now, this CPI measure is no longer reflective of how cars or how transportation costs are actually realized by consumers. So therefore, CPI usually lags actual inflation indicator as actual inflation indicator. That's just one factor that detracts from CPI. However, CPI is still used as the best choice, the lesser of evils in measuring inflation. Another thing is that a headline CPI could have huge fluctuations from period to period, such as a cyclone, a typhoon, a hurricane came and destroyed a lot of crops. Gas, energy prices, OPEC choose to cut production for petroleum, therefore energy prices are out of the roof. So these are really volatile. So instead of only looking at CPI, some economists and some policymakers look at what is called core CPI, where we take CPI and then we strip out volatile components such as food because of production issues or whatnot, as energy. Okay, food you can see fluctuations upwards of 30% period to period, quarter over quarter. It's really quite remarkable how much it fluctuates. So therefore, cutting these out really shows a better understanding or a better reflection of actual CPI. So here's volatile items, cost of inflation. So once again, nobody likes inflation. It erodes consumers' trust and it erodes stability. It erodes confidence. It makes it harder for business to plan for the future. It makes consumers lose trust in the economy system. However, you also don't want deflation, which is negative inflation, because if you expect if you expect if you expect your money to be worth less next year, or you will want to spend it right now. Okay, if I know $50 will only be worth $45 next year, I will want to spend it right now because I wouldn't want to hold on to cash as devaluing asset. Now, on the other hand, if I know my stack of $50 bills will be worth more next year due to deflation, then I will not want to spend my money. I will want to hoard my money because I know it will be worth more next year. If it would be worth more less next year, what incentivizes me to spend? Nothing, because it would make more sense for me to hoard it. Now, if I hoard my money, I will not cause economic activity. I will cause economic activity to go down. Businesses will not invest because what's the incentive in investing? Your money would just be worth more being in money, right? All right, so this is supplies to the downsides. Hurt, deflation spirals, and cap. So deflation clear increases, zero lower bond. The problem with zero lower bond. So here's the idea that real interest rates is equal to nominal interest rates plus a premium. Okay. Where in order for investors to be willingly able to invest in bonds and fixed assets, they have to be compensated with a premium. So as the premium decreases, you should also expect real interest rates to decrease. So this is the Fisher equation. So what causes inflation? Once again, when money supply increases, there's more money chasing the same amount of goods. Therefore, prices of goods will increase, reflecting the increase in money supply. So here's what you can see the Phillips curve. As unemployment decreases, inflation also decreases. Here's what you see the M2 supply, understanding inflation, low inflation, expectations for the Phillips curve, and different assumptions about inflation expectations, and how the Phillips curve is affected. Okay, so I hope this is a comprehensive review for the course material here in week 12, talking about unemployment, talking about inflation. Really, really relevant topics, really, really interesting topics for the course. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time. Take care and goodbye.